Stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. This is Monday, February 20th. If you have any questions or concerns, come to the microphone, give us your name and your address, and tell us what's on your mind. Call the roll, please.
Cedar.
Here.
Gottler.
Here.
Kufa.
Here.
Laporte.
Here.
Hall.
Present.
Foltz.
Here.
Watt.
Here.
All present, Your Honor.
Thank you. Number 4 is the consent agenda. A is City Council minutes of February 6, 2023. Recommendation, approve.
Motion to approve. Support.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Let's go to number 5, ordinances, resolution. A, resolution 23-6, North of Intent Water Supply Systems Revenue Bond. We have Tom Colas here tonight to walk us through this. Welcome, Tom.
Good evening. Nice to see you again. So if you recall, last month we talked about the project through the drinking water program, and part of that's fundable through the drinking water program, and part of it didn't qualify, or they didn't have enough funding to include the full city's issue as part of that. So what you have before you, well, there's really 2 resolutions. We'll talk about them each separately. So just a reminder, the estimated project cost is about $10.935 million. The state, through American Rescue Plan Fund, is offering a grant of 25% of that project cost. So that's just over $2.7 million of grant funding. So that means that you use that for the project. There's no requirement to pay any of that back. That's a pure grant. The remainder of the project has to be funded either from a loan through drinking water, and the remaining costs would be funded by a bond issued by the city. So the loan is really a bond that the city would issue that the state would buy through the Michigan Finance Authority, which is part of the drinking water program. And then the city would issue bonds for the remaining project costs out to the market. So that's why we've broken these up into 2 resolutions. The one is going to be issued as a revenue bond, and that would be the one that would be sold to the state through the program. Again, if you remember, the rates are already set for the state program, so it's either 1.875% or 2.125%. So either 1 7/8 or 2 1/8 would be the interest rate through the bond rolled through the state. You can make that decision when we come back to council after the bids are open to determine whether you wanted to do a 20-year or 30-year maturity, and that's the difference in the interest rate. So the 20-year would be the 1.875, and the 30-year would be the 2.125%. The step that we're doing now is just the initiation of the process. So the total process is we start with council considering a resolution that authorizes the publication of a notice in the paper. That notice states the city's intention to issue bonds for this project, states the maximum amount, the source of security for the bonds, and the right of referendum associated therewith. So council can proceed to issue bonds without a vote of the public if there's no petition filed within 45 days of the publication of that notice. Now, that petition would have to be signed by at least 10% of the registered electors of the city in order to put that to a full vote versus proceeding and bringing another resolution or ordinance to council after the bids have been open. So for both of these resolutions, it's the same process, even though they're issued under different statutes. Same process. Start with the notice of intent. So if approved, both of these would authorize the publication of the notice in that paper. The project would be bid in May of this year. Under the schedule that the city has with Eagle, those bids would be opened at the end of June, and then we'd come back to council for consideration of actually authorizing the issuance of the bonds sometime in early July. You'd know exactly then what the estimated project costs were so that we can refine those numbers going forward based on actual bids. Hopefully the bids are as good or better than what's estimated, but we've seen a wide range of bids in the last few years, as you can imagine, on costs. So for purposes of the notices, and let's talk about them specifically. So the first one that you have on the agenda is for, looking at last week's agenda, it's for the revenue bonds. So that's so it's at the top, it says water supply system revenue bonds. Again, it has a description of the project, and that has a not to exceed amount of 3.5 million in the notice. Again, we currently expect that to be hopefully somewhere around 2.5. But to allow some cushion in case bids come in higher and the city wants to proceed with the project, and potentially if the state's willing to loan more dollars, we wanted to build that cushion into the notice. That's not a requirement to issue that amount of bonds. Again, we'll come back to council after the bids are open and revisit the dollar amount that'll be issued and how much the state will fund as part of that revenue bond. And it also states the city's intention to reimburse itself for any costs it may incur or pay prior to the bond proceeds being available. So for example, if the city is currently paying engineering costs associated with, designing and bidding the project out, once the funds become available through the state, it can then reimburse itself from those bond proceeds if it so chooses, or it can continue to just fund those from funds on hand if that was the plan all along. So since these bonds will be tax exempt from a federal standpoint, the IRS says, well, to be able to use bond proceeds to reimburse, you have to state your intention to do so. So that's why we put it in the resolution here.
And can I just interrupt? Is that,
Yes.
that's 4A on this document, is that correct? Item 4A? On page 2?
5A, right?
4D.
5 doesn't have A, B, C, D.
Yeah. 5A is the resolution, is that right?
I'm just.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're looking at the, you're actually looking at the resolution
Yeah.
itself?
Yeah.
Correct. That's
Okay.
the whole item 4 is
Is
that
what you
whole
just explained.
reimbursement. Exactly right.
Thank you.
That's the purpose of that
Okay.
tax jargon section.
Yeah.
Is because that's right from the tax code. Yep.
Thank you.
So that's really the dual purpose of the resolution. Authorizes the publication of the notice, state your intent to reimburse from bond proceeds. Happy to answer any questions on that particular one or on the process going forward. And then I'm happy to describe the second one if you want me to do that now or wait for action.
We'll take these one at a time, but
Yep.
I do have one quick question, Tom.
Sure.
And I think I'm probably premature with this, but can you give me any kind of ballpark time when we will know, and I'm assuming you're saying the bid, when they come in, what we really need as far as allocating on a yearly basis, whatever, to cover this?
You mean from like how much debt service will be, how much will the city have to pay? So you'll know exactly, I don't know if Quentin did, I don't know if the folks at Benzinski had sent you some information on that already, on the possible
The debt
debt
schedule.
service, yeah, on the debt
Yes.
schedules. So we would know pretty much now, since we know what the possible interest rates are, right? So assuming a $2.5 million transaction, the financial advisor can provide those figures based on either a 1 7/8 interest rate or a 2 1/8 interest rate. So we'd know within the next few months, certainly when bids come in, you'd have a good idea. When we consider, if you consider the resolution or ordinance at the July meeting, you'd know exactly on the bonds that are being sold to the state, what that debt service would look like. And then we would estimate for the other ones, because those are expected to be sold to the bond market. So that timing's slightly different. Again, we would authorize those bonds, and then we would actually go out and market and sell those bonds versus knowing that the revenue bonds are going to be bought by the state, right? So the only difference between these two is we know the state's buying the one if you decide to issue those, and if you want to issue the other ones, the state's not going to buy those because they won't fund it. So we'd have to go out and sell those to the market, and we don't know the interest rate until we actually get bids in on those.
Thanks. Any questions for Tom?
Yeah, on Exhibit A and the actual here, that is what would be printed as our public notice.
That's correct.
It lists 30 annual installments. Is
Not
that-
to exceed. Yep.
Not to exceed.
Not to
just so we
exceed,
have that
yep.
room to go to 20 if
That's
if
correct, yes.
necessary.
Yep.
Thank you.
It's not more than 30 installments. So what we like to do in these notices is they really set the ceiling for how much can be issued
Yeah.
and how long the debt can be outstanding.
Great.
No, Tom, on the part where it says, Exhibit A, again, source of payment. From the revenues received by the city from operation of the water supply system. But if we come up with something creative to help us do that, we're not locked into that just because of that, are we?
No, you're not.
Okay.
Because what you're pledging is revenues. You are pledging revenues of the system on the revenue bonds, right? So, but the city could use any legally available funds to make debt service payments on those bonds.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for Tom? We will need a motion to pass the resolution of intent water supply system revenue bonds.
So moved. Support.
Right, motion made, support, questions? All right, call the roll, please.
Gottler,
Support.
Koopa,
Yes.
Laporte,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Folds,
Yes.
Lot,
Yes.
Cedar.
Yes.
Resolution adopted.
All right, thank you, Tom. We'll go to B, 23-7, North of Intent, DWR SRF capital improvement bonds.
Okay, so similarly, again, project's the same project description, right? So this is the bonds that we're going to sell out to the market. And these are called capital improvement bonds versus revenue bonds, even though your source of repayment can be exactly the same. The reason we've chosen to issue capital improvement bonds out to the market is that when you sell revenue bonds out to the market requires you to fund a debt service reserve fund. So it's basically a year's worth of debt service that just sits in a reserve for the life of your bond issue, and then you actually use that reserve to make your last payment. So you actually issue more than you need to cover debt service because the only thing that you would pledge out to the market would be revenues of the system. Here is a capital improvement bond. We're pledging the general fund, but we intend to use revenue bonds to support that. So the market doesn't require a debt service reserve fund. So you actually will issue less debt than you would if we did revenue bonds, and capital improvement bonds sell better in the market than revenue bonds do. So that's from the city's standpoint. You're still going to use the exact same source of revenues to pay back debt service on both of these series of bonds. Again, to the extent there's another funding source that you come up with, you could use that to actually pay the debt service. But what we pledge to the bondholder is slightly different, and then it doesn't require us to issue and fund that debt service reserve. So this dollar amount, because again, under the existing breakdown, the city would have to fund approximately $5.7 million to cover that gap between the grant, the loan, the revenue bonds to the state, and the remaining project cost. That's about $5.7 million. So we've set the notice at not to exceed $7 million in total. Again, that's the ceiling. Once bids come in, then we can refine and look at that number and see what we actually need to authorize at the July meeting. And then if that gets authorized in July, then we would look to go out and market the bonds. So working with the city's financial advisor, get together the documentation that you use to market to sell the bonds. But again, this resolution just authorizes that notice, states the intent to reimburse, and then we would come back for the bond resolution would be a much heartier resolution, probably 15, 20 pages long, and have the forms of bonds and forms and the method of sale. So I'd come back at that time and we'd have another discussion as to the next step associated with that. So this is just the first step in this process too for this bond issue.
So just for my chronological clearinghouse, we'll open the bids in June.
Yep,
So then at that point, we'll have a real good solid idea what this really is going to cost.
exactly.
And then when you're going to come in here in July, basically, that's when we're going to know if it's going to be 20 years or 30 years and what the rate will be.
We'll know for the drinking water what the rate will be. We won't know what the rate will be for the capital improvement bonds because we're just authorizing them, and then we're going to authorize to go out and sell the bonds. We won't know the rate on those bonds until we actually sell them. So that'll be sometime late July, probably early August.
Do we know where those are hovering right now today?
Yeah, we had a pretty good sense. I mean, you're probably in the 4% range, 3.5%, 4%. The market has been improving since last fall, which is good. Because I think when financial advisors were running estimates on that, they were probably in the 4.5% range. But we've sold some bonds recently where we've seen some good rates in the, threes and, high threes, low fours. So hopefully that'll continue. Again, we're talking a number of months until selling bonds, and the market can be volatile depending upon various things. So, but hopefully that trend continues, and we would see a favorable interest rate. It's not going to be as good as the state one, of course. It's unfortunate that the state couldn't fully fund that because, 1 7/8 and 2 1/8 is a really attractive interest rate, certainly for 20 and 30 years. So, Mayor, back to your point, we would come back in July. So the July meeting would have not only review of the bids and a tentative award of your contract. It would also have the bond authorization based off of those bids. So that gets sequenced where we want to know what the price is. You can tentatively award your contracts, and then we authorize the issuance of these two series of bonds based on those numbers.
Anything else for Tom?
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So we had asked this question before, and I don't know if we got the full answer. If we did, I apologize. But to review, do we know what our total debt service is today, total percentage of what we're looking at, how this is going to affect it, and what projects might be limited to moving forward?
We don't know what the total debt service is going to look like yet because we don't know what the interest rate is on those capital improvement bonds, right? That's going to be the factor that we won't be able to. Now, we can probably forecast that. Your financial advisor can forecast that using a conservative interest rate estimate, so you could get a good feel for that now. That's not something that I prepare, that your financial advisor prepares that. So you could probably have that information available at the next meeting if you wanted to. Certainly you would have that available prior to actually authorizing the issuance of the bonds. So you'd have a good ballpark figure as to, you'd know exactly on the drinking water side because we know what those rates are, but you'd have a pretty good estimate. It might be a conservative estimate, but you'd have a good estimate on the capital improvement bonds, which would be your total debt service when you combine the two of them.
But this is something, Quentin, you had asked about in the previous meeting. So if we conservatively estimated 5%, where would it land us? Are we 35% of whatever our ability?
Debt ceiling.
Debt ceiling is. Where do we run out? At 44, I don't know what the number would be, but so we've got some idea of what's left
Right.
for our new, the next 10 years of projects. Just good understanding.
Right.
Yeah, we can also provide basically a chart that shows if we issue these dollar amounts, here's what debt capacity, if you're looking at debt limit questions. So the nice thing about revenue bonds is they don't count towards your debt limit.
Okay.
Capital improvement bonds do. So we look at the city's overall 10% of state equalized value debt limit. Now, what's nice is the city doesn't have a lot of debt outstanding. So that's why, another reason why capital improvement bonds were chosen. So you'll have a good amount of capability to the extent you wanted to, let's just say you'll have a good debt limit still. If projects come up in the foreseeable future that you wanted to finance through debt, you should have you'll have capacity, but we'll be able to put that together so you can see what that looks like.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? I'll ask for a motion to pass the resolution for the intent for the DWSRF capital improvement bonds.
So moved.
Supported.
Questions? All right, call the roll, please.
Ufa,
Yes.
Laporte,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Foltz,
Yes.
Blatt,
Yes.
Gatler,
Yes.
Cedar.
Yes.
Adopted, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to number 6, Ports Administration. Mr. Bishop, what do you got tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. Just 3 quick updates. I wanted to inform everybody that we're going to go and undergo a contract audit. We're going to start with all the telecommunications within the city. So we're going to start looking at AT&T and Comcast. These will be line-by-line audits. There's no secret that sometimes AT&T, once you change a building or you change a phone line, the phone line could be discontinued, but the line is still open, and then carry a charge that we're unaware of. And so what we want to do is we want to audit every single line to ensure that the lines that we're paying for are the lines that are in use. And if they're not in use, cancel the service completely on that line. And I anticipate we should be able to see a savings there because there's already been identified 2 or 3 lines. In addition to that, Park and Recreation Director, Ms. Hawkins, and I visited the Community Foundation on Monday, February 13th, where we asked for grant dollars. 3 grants were awarded to the city. City beautification was awarded at $19,000. The summer concert series was approved for $6,000. And the youth activities programs for the summer playground was approved for $3,000. Last but not least, traveled to Flint on Tuesday, February 14th for the LDFA hearing, which would create the LDFA St. Clair Development Area. That was a positive meeting. The LDFA was created, St. Clair Development Area was created, and that allows us financing advantages that we otherwise would not be able to see. That's all I had for tonight.
Any questions for Quentin? All right, we'll go, our city attorney, nothing tonight. Any city departments tonight? All right, D, authorities, boards, committee chairs, council reps.
Just mentioned from the Historical Commission meeting last week, they're starting up lots of great programs coming. They've got Be a Tourist in Your hometown scheduled again for May 20th, I think is the date. But also wanted to mention just that building. Each time we're going to that building, we're finding pieces of the roof in the parking lot. Shingles are flying off with all this wind, so I think we need to move quickly on that roofing project that we have budgeted for this year.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? All right, we have no unfinished business under 7. Let's go to number 8, new business. A is Board of Review appointments. I have two appointments. The Board of Review appoint Elizabeth Schweihofer and Tom Jalaski each to a 1-year term to expire December 31st. To the Board of Review, December 31st, 2023.
So moved. Support.
Questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, approved purchase agreement of industrial park. Mr. Bishop.
Sure. So what we have before you on the dais is a purchase agreement. This is between the I-69 International Trade Corridor, Local Development Finance Authority of St. Clair, Development Area Number 1, and between the City of St. Clair. The recitals are as they are written. The offer on the table is the purchase price for the subject premises shall be $700,000, which shall be paid plus or minus closing adjustments at the once the wire transfer is complete through the title company. All land thereof within this agreement would be transferred then to the LDFA. It reads very much like any purchase agreement you have seen before. The possession, exclusive possession of the subject premise shall be given to purchaser at closing. That's important. Warranty shall be transferred. It is to note on page 3, 8A, warranty deed conveying fee simple title to the subject premises, the purchaser with consideration stated only in separate real estate transfer valuation affidavit. In simple terms to me, this is a fee simple title exchange. So it is very standard. The purchase agreement speaks to that. There is no lien on the property at this point. There is no other obligation owed to any outstanding debt within the property. So this is a clear transaction from the I-69 LDFA paying for the property of $700,000 to the City of St. Clair.
I guess I only have one question. Are we involved in it if the LDFA is deciding to sell it next? Or is there any other city involvement of it once it's sold? I mean, as part of the LDFA, does it have to come to us anymore? Is this it?
This is it.
Okay.
This is it.
That's it.
It is good to note we do have representation on the LDFA board, so
But
there
it's
will
up
be
to them
St.
to
Clair.
determine the next sale.
Correct.
Great.
That's what I want to ask you, Quentin. The LDFA, who are they?
The LDFA is the board of the Next Michigan Business Development Corporation. It really is members from Shiawassee County, Genesee, Lapeer, St. Clair, and the Next Michigan Development Corporation exists to provide financial incentives. One of these is to create an LDFA, which stands for, if you don't know, is a Local Development Finance Authority. It allows for taxes to be captured and to be pay off infrastructure debts. So they are us. We represent part of that board, but we are part of a larger region, which is the I-69 Next Michigan Business.
So we're selling the parcel, the 24 acres, to them.
Correct.
They turn around and sell it to Magna.
Correct.
At whatever price they determine.
It's been predetermined, yes.
Predetermined. Okay. Prior to, because I kind of came in at halftime of this, the original, how many acres was it? Was it 60 acres that were sold prior, that we sold? That, we didn't go through an LDFA now because this has just been created.
Correct.
I guess I'm asking why? Why don't we sell directly to Magna? I'm just trying to understand this in-between, this go-between.
Yeah, the go-between is necessary in order for a certain amount of tax capture to pay for infrastructure, to pay for the debt of the infrastructure, essentially. So they have created...
Similar to like what the EDA would do?
Correct, but the EDA can't do that by law. LDFAs can. Okay, so they're a quasi-government entity that allows for tax capture, and once those entities take on a project which they can buy and sell property, they can take the taxes which would be generated from the property and apply them to development cost, apply them towards infrastructure cost.
So that $700,000 will then go into our general fund?
It is ours free and clear. It has nothing to do with any development of the Magna property. It is a real estate transaction. So that $700,000 will be coming back into the city.
Okay. Thanks.
Welcome.
Anybody else?
Need a motion?
I need a motion.
So moved.
Support. All right, the motion's made and supported to approve the purchase agreement of the industrial park. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Claim 1374 South Riverside. When they take ownership on it, will it go on the tax rolls?
One more time, sorry.
When they take ownership of the property, will it go on the tax rolls?
It will be on the tax rolls. So it will be captured, those taxes will be captured through the LDFA.
No, when they own it, will the LDA pay taxes on it? When will it go on the tax rolls? As soon as it's sold?
Not
It's exempt- it's exempt from taxes right now.
December one.
Pardon me?
I think I asked Wendy that, and it goes to the next
Yeah.
December.
But the LFDA, they're a taxable entity. When they own the property, it'll go on the tax roll with their name.
So the LDFA will not be in possession of the property long enough to pay taxes on it.
All right, so what's the timeline in getting it to Magnum?
Within 60 days, as soon as, that's why we're doing the purchase agreement now.
All right. I was just curious if how long they're going to hold on to it until they actually give it.
Yeah, and I apologize, I didn't quite understand the question about the tax rolls for the LDFA. They're not going to have it on the tax rolls at all, because as soon as they take possession, the LDFA, they're turning it around and selling it to Magna.
No, you didn't. When Mr. Watt asked how long it would take to sell it, you really didn't answer. So that's kind of why I was thinking 2-3 years down the road they're going to hold on this thing or what. But
No, this is going to be turned over within the next 60 days.
all right, so we'll be on next year's tax roll.
Correct.
On the Magnum. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, call the roll, please.
Laporte,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Folds,
Yes.
Platt,
Yes.
Gottler,
Yes.
Guffa,
Yes.
Cedar,
Yes.
carried.
All right, thank you. Well, number 9, claims and accounts, February 9 and 16, 2023.
Hearing no questions, Your Honor, I make a motion to approve as presented.
Questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Vote number 10, public questions and comments. Anybody have any non-agenda items? 3 minutes, if you would, please. Come up to the podium. And Jill, you up? Come on.
Hi, Mr. Bishop. We haven't met yet, I don't think. I'm Jill Yacom, 1210 Oakwood Lane. I have my group with me here again. First question, did we get the PACER study done on Oakwood Sub? When we were here, what was it, 3 months ago, the gentleman who was sitting right up front said that he was going to do the study.
Yeah, so this is AEW, and our engineer is Mr. Ryan Kern.
Uh-huh.
And so the last time I checked in with him last week, that study for the latest year has not been completed yet. We anticipate a completed study by April.
Okay, is Oakwood going from orange to red, as we talked about in the last meeting?
I don't know what the new rating is going to
Have
be for
any
that
of you
road.
gone down Oakwood Lane, or?
I was there
Hugo
today.
or Jackson?
I was there today.
And?
On all of them. That's
What
a
do you-
nice road. Jill, I drove those roads, and I I'm gonna ask you to do it too. Go over on Cass from 3rd to 6th, and go over to 4th Street and 5th Street from Clinton all the way north. And I know that your road is not great, but I'm telling you, if you
Oh,
ride
no,
those roads.
it's bad. It's not great. I get
I've
what
also
you're
driven
saying.
the road. I drove that road that evening several times, actually about 10 times back and forth, different rates of speed, 5, 10, 15, all the way up to the legal limit. To get an idea for it, I went back and drove my road on the way home. I could give you a personal rendition of where I think the road is, but I don't know where it'll come in on the city study and where it's going to fall on everything else, like the entire city's waiting to see.
Okay, so in April, if it does go into the red when he comes to do his survey, how long does it take to get a bid done on it for the sub?
Well, that really all depends on what type of work needs to be done. If it's a full reconstruction, the bid will take a bit longer to do. If it's a mill and fill, 2, 4, 6 inches, those are different type of bids, different type of timings for it.
Well,
Quite frankly, I would like to see bids in and road construction planned in the month of April.
okay. Is Oakwood sub on that?
Currently not now.
Why not?
When we have to make a decision based on, do we aim at more road or single roads for less or more money? So a reconstruct on Oakwood could equate to the same as maybe 3, 4 other interior roads that need as much attention or more.
Right.
And so it comes down to, if a Pazer study comes back and says there's equal numbers of Ward 1, 2, and 3 in red, and the pie is only so big, and you have to start carving up this pie, who gets the slice?
Well, I think a sub that's 39 years old should get a piece of the pie, because you guys did the
You get-
sub in the Highlands that was half our age.
We pulled together some numbers just for some perspective, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't speaking out of turn. Every road is going to be important because we have residents who live on those roads, and there's
Right,
children on
because
those
it's
roads.
depreciating the values of our home, correct?
Over the course of the last just 2 years, this is just a study I pulled up from 2019 through 21. The general investment in Ward 1, just through 19 through 21, doesn't include the investment we made last year. Ward 1 received just over $267,000 worth of improvements. Ward 2, in the same amount of time, received $1.1 million worth of investments. Ward 3, which I believe this is included in with Oakwood,
Yes.
received the most at $1.3 million worth of investment in the same amount of time.
It's not Oakwood sub.
St. Clair Highway, Golf Street.
11th, Henry,
Henry,
Henry.
10th.
St. Clair Highway, Golf and Palmer.
I don't know. I guess you guys know why we're here. It's so discouraging for a sub that's that old. And again, I'm going back to the Highlands. You did a mill and fill all the way through there. I drove all the way through there. And Delano, which is even newer than our sub. For all that, you could have put them off a couple more years and have done our sub.
But just understand, Jill, even if we had not done that, those were mill and fills, and what was it, just under $300,000 for all that? But to do a total reconstruct of what your road, it's gonna be close to $1 million.
So you're basically saying that our sub, our road, needs a total reconstruction, am I
That's what we
correct?
don't know right now. But if it
Well, then
does,
how can you assume that, though?
I'm just throwing out the different options that are out there.
But you assumed that they needed it more than we did.
Well,
Do
that
you
was
see
done
what
by
I'm
an
getting
engineer. That's what we had engineering on that, and they said this can be a mill and fill. And when we can do that many roads for that kind of money,
Well, I think there's a gray area there, really, truly, and I'm sure everybody else agrees with it. It's just, I guess I just don't understand it. When that sub is half the age of our sub, and they could have been put off a couple more years. Why not have taken the funds and filtered them into Ward 3 to get our sub done?
Ms. Yakum, I can appreciate your concerns. I live in a home that's got a road out in front of mine that's twice as old as yours. And mine hasn't been touched. My road doesn't even actually exist at the moment.
Right.
So,
Well, I think then there's something wrong with the process here. Would you not agree?
Well, the problem is that 6 years ago, we went to the voters and said, we need a road millage because we need to fix these roads. The first vote came, we wanted a perpetual. Mr. Foley said, let's do it, just keep it going forever. They turned us down, so we had to come back, trim it down to 10 years, of which we're in, I think we're starting year 6 now, actually. And there was only so much money we have. And it's because of what the people told us to do. The people gave us a directive. Here's what we voted, they said. And that's what we have to work with every year. And I I wish I could pave every single road. But
Right.
we have to look at the money.
Well, I guess it's about maintaining, and I don't think the city has really maintained them.
Thank you.
And I'm just giving you my honest opinion.
Yeah, my name is Hunter Wynn. I live at the junction of 2 decrepit roads, Oak Boulevard and Jackson Street. And I'll tell you, the council, you have a tough job, there's no question. But to me, there's only a few things that council are primary that they do. One is police, fire, water, and roads. And I'll tell you, I've got your 2020 list of bad roads. It looks like you gave a red crayon to a kindergartner and told them to follow between the lines. It's disgusting that the roads in St. Clair are this bad. And you didn't need a vote by the residents to spend money to fix roads. You have the discretion to spend money to fix roads, number one. Number two, that road, for some reason, city council at that time did not require the contractor to complete the road. If you look at the curb is 2 inches higher than the pavement. They never had him put a second lift in. And the city has allowed that to happen for over 40 years and done nothing to correct your failure to review the actions of contractors in building. Next point I would make, the city is getting a lot more revenue recently from new construction of homes, condominiums, associations. There's available money to put towards the roads. If I were a realtor and I had a listing in our subdivision, I'd be apologizing to the potential buyer for the state of the roads. It's just not appropriate for the city to ignore this. We'd be better off if you went through and ground it up and made it gravel. I swear, it's a terrible road. It needs to be fixed. And I can tell by the tone here that you're not going to do it. We're just wasting our time talking to you. We shouldn't have to come here and plead to have a decrepit road fixed. One that was constructed poorly, not managed by the city when it was built, and now 40 years later, we got to come here on our hands and knees and ask you to fix it? It's very disturbing. Let me put it that way. We should have good roads in this city. It shouldn't look like this. Why was no money invested in the roads? Not just our road, all of these roads. Why wasn't money invested in those over the years?
That's what I said in the first meeting, that, even when and correct me if I'm wrong, but even if you took 1% out of a summer or winter tax and put it towards roads, every time these new subs were being developed, you'd have more money to borrow against, to even maintain. The whole point is, as I think Hunter and I are trying to make, is they weren't maintained at all. And our road wasn't even done properly when the sub was built. Now, you can't go back in time, I realize that. But, it's just getting a little disheartening. And just because you have $300,000-$400,000 homes in the Highlands, well, my house is worth $4. But, and everybody's been paying our taxes. But even because we're a smaller sub, it just seems like we keep getting overlooked.
Right.
We can't even get a pothole filled. There's been a section in front of our neighbors, I don't know how many feet it is, it's been like that for 15 years. They've never come out to fill it when they took the piece of pavement out. I don't want to be that person. I I'm a very black and white person. I don't see gray area here. You know, we'd like to be put on the list. We just want to be acknowledged and get our sub on the list.
Thank you, you guys.
In addition, you know, you guys have established budgets for this year, and I'm sure that snow removal and overtime for maintenance people was included, and you haven't had to spend it. There's additional money available, I believe, immediately to address problems with the roads. Anyway, thanks. I appreciate your listening.
thank you.
But I do hope you give serious consideration to our subdivision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jill.
Appreciate it.
Don't have to leave. You're doing a good job, darling. Dee Bollier, 1110 Oakwood. I guess what we really want to know as a neighborhood, when it is going to get done, because if you keep saying mill and fill, you're going to kick our can down, and I'll be in goddamn Hillside Cemetery. And I want to see it done. There's two things I want to see before I croak. I want to get on the sandbar with Mayor.
That might happen this year. The water's going down, so.
Yeah, and I want my road fixed.
I can go out there with you and get all ready.
And I mean, I don't want to hear about the traffic or that. I had a neighbor call tonight. He's elderly and he can't make it, but he said he had to get his car fixed over at McDonald Ford. And he said, I'm on Jackson Street. He said, oh, I know where you live. He said, we take our cars over there if people have rattles in them. That's how we find where the squeaks are in their cars. I guess what we would like to hear is when, and if it's a year, 2 years, but we got to get on a list, and you can't keep saying mill and fill. You redid St. Clair Highway. That portion of St. Clair Highway was not bad. It was not bad at all. It was just down by the railroad tracks where it was bad. Now, you spent the money there, and it really doesn't help any of us. It helps Randy Young going to the cemetery, you know.
It helps you because you said you're going there.
Yeah, I am. Someday. Hopefully not soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Dee. Thanks, Jill.
Does anyone else from the sub, would they like to say something?
My name's Josh Daniels, 1916 Jackson Street. And the biggest problems on our road appears to be where it goes from overhead wire underground to the transformers on the, what would that be, the west side or north side of Jackson. There's like 3 cutouts and they're dropping, they gotta be down 6 to 8 inches. If that does continue and that keeps settling, you're gonna be way past mill and fill. I do DPW work for a trade and I know you're right there right now, but it doesn't appear like we have a lot of water main issues there, do we? I've been there 2 years and seen no water main issues other than by McDonald's. So at that point, it seems like the infrastructure underneath it seems decent, minus what Edison has caused throwing them transformers, speaking for Jackson Street. So I think you're right at the cusp where the mill and fill might work if you brought it up above the gutter like they're speaking. Because it's 2.5 inches below the gutter going in everybody's driveway. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Josh. Anybody else?
I'd like to be added to the list.
You're on the list too?
Yeah, I want to make sure my road's on the list,
All right.
please.
Jim Beer, 1620 North Delano. I did not come with this group of folks from Oakwood Sub, but I can't pass up the opportunity to be the squeaky wheel for the Meadows subdivision. It's pretty bad. And if I just pause for a second, I could repeat the same thing for just about every part of town. And I think that that's what you, Mayor, and Council already recognize. And I support what you said, Mayor Cedar, taking a little bit of a history lesson, going back 6 years. I couldn't remember how many years it was, but I was before council. Some of you were on council at that time. I came before that first millage vote, probably about a year before that, and laid out some realities to you at that time that the lack of routine maintenance had created a dire situation at that time. The roads had deteriorated so that they were open and allowing moisture into the subgrade, which was causing roads to settle 2 inches below the lip of a curb, whether they were constructed originally that way or not, they became that way. Then asphalt began to turn to gravel. There was consideration given by council. There was recommendations, a request to our engineer and a recommendation made as to what should be done to correct the problem. Well, engineer at that time said, you've got serious problems on your hands that you can't delay and spread out over time. They need to be addressed quickly. So a bond was created to do a more sensible set of corrections. It was put before the city, and it was turned down because people are convinced that there's a whole pot of money that the city's not sharing with the community. Anybody who comes and looks at budgets that are created every year knows that this city doesn't charge you more taxes than they spend. They bring the money in, they pay for the services that are provided, and they carry enough of a balance to do business. They don't stash it away. They don't put it in their own pockets. They need, and they have a large capital expense, they need to go to the tax base and, if necessary, ask for more. You guys and the rest of the city said, no way, we're not going to do it. So, recognizing that roads had to be repaired, they came back with an alternate. Unfortunately, from my point of view as a civil engineer, I realized we were going to be where we are today. There was no way that that small sum of money and whatever they could kick in from the general fund was going to take care of the roads and get ahead of the problem. So here we are. It doesn't matter who gets on the list this year, next year, or the year after. There are going to be significant parts of town that are going to be falling apart. And those roads that were repaired at the beginning of this bond are going to need mill and fill maintenance to keep them from becoming exactly the same again. I compliment you for being judicious every year, finding the best way to do what you can, but you're digging a hole and you're realizing it like these folks are suffering with. So many of them are now going to be complete rebuilds, which there are no funds in that current bond that we're collecting money on for maintenance to do a whole city of complete rebuilds. So unless there's a whole bunch more revenue that we can put in there from general fund, if we want these kind of problems fixed in your neighborhood and mine, maybe we're going to look for another bond to raise more funds for roads.
Well, Jim, you have segued into what I've been kind of preaching a little bit with the administration and council at that too. Our 10-year bond is going to be up in, I believe, 4 or 5 years. My feeling is we got to go back to the voters and say, look, we need a renewal on that. And it's going to be, and I know they won't give us perpetual, but if they give us 10 years and 10 years later we got to go, because you're never going to be done with roads.
No, you can't be done with roads. You have to take care of them.
It has to be constant. We can never go just say, okay, we're going to take a break now. It just can't happen. So I'm just warning the people that if I have my way, we will be coming back to renew that bond again. So
I know
keep going.
You were behind the whole concept, both first request and second request. I know that.
Yeah. Thank you.
You bet.
So wouldn't you agree that they haven't been maintained?
No, I won't. I somewhat, but we crack seal, and you're telling me that your road's been there 40 years, so it has to have been maintained somewhat, or wouldn't last 40 years.
Crack seal's only been done for the last 3 or 4 years, and that's because I pushed, got the prices on the crack seal machine for Mike Moon.
That's called working together. That's what we do.
I mean, so.
But please understand, I come into this guy's office every day for an hour, and we are looking and scrounging and trying to find ways that we can do more roads and do the really bad roads. And we understand the condition of the roads out there. We drive them, we look at them, we get it. We get it. But we're dealing with $1 million a year, basically, is what we've got to spend. And that sounds like it's just like a ton of money. It's very limiting.
That's $700,000 in roads.
Some of it will probably go there. Some of it's going to have to go to the pension, which we're way behind on. We have other things too. We have to balance it all. That's what we try to do. And I could have every other neighborhood come in here every other meeting and tell me the same thing. 4th Street, 5th Street, Cass Street.
It's a very global issue for our entire community. Everybody
Yeah,
up
the
here.
whole
The
state
reason I'm
Michigan is
sitting
the
here
same
is because I wanted to make a difference instead of not understanding what the problems were. I wanted to look behind the curtain in the Wizard of Oz and see who's running it and how it's running. I'm grateful that we have the people sitting here today. I'm grateful that we have the minds that are looking at the budgets. It's not an easy problem. I mean, some of you may feel it is. I'm very sorry it's not. That's why I'm volunteering my time and everybody else up here to figure out how to solve this problem as a younger individual in our community that's investing very heavily.
And I don't like passing the buck, I really don't, but if you really want to do something, pick up your phone, call Lansing. They've got a $2 billion surplus. I think that would go a long way to fixing some of the roads in this entire state. And they're sitting over there talking about giving us each $180 to relieve our inflation ills.
Unless you file jointly, then you don't get it. So,
Anyway,
Yeah.
I apologize for that, but that is what you talk about, $2 billion with a B.
What are our legislators doing to get St. Clair that money?
that's where we need help.
What are they doing? You're in contact with them.
We need help. We need
They want to hear
more
from you
voice.
people too. But they just think
We
we're
need
just
help.
asking because they, well, you don't want to spend your money. The entire state of Michigan is the same predicament we're in. Try to find a balance between how much you got to spend, how much can you fix. But please understand, we appreciate you coming here because we know your feelings are hurt, and that's not what we want. We do want to fix roads, and I hate to just say this, but it's gonna take time.
I guess, is it fair to say that, you know, within the next construction season, you come up with some roads that you're going to do, but are you ever going to come up and say, yes, Oakwood subdivision, we got it scheduled for 2025? I guess that's the whole thing. Now, when you say a complete reconstruction, I don't think that ours would need a complete reconstruction. If they cut like a foot off the curbs, replace the curbs, milled it first because it's 6 inches thick, asphalt 6 inches thick down there. So pop 3 inches off, fix the curbs, fill in along the curbs and then top it. And I think you got to get a price that way because you really don't have any kind of idea unless you got some quotes as to how much that is really going to cost.
Yeah.
Now, speaking to the downtown area, I agree, there's a lot of bad streets, but when you look at it, you only have to go maybe a block to get to an east-west street or a north-south street that is in pretty good shape. So you really don't, where I've got to go 2/10 of a mile to get to either Clinton Avenue or Fredmore Highway, or Kearney. So, I mean, downtown is a little different situation, I think,
I think it's all bad, D.
No,
So,
I realize it's all bad, but.
Yeah. To answer your question, like, will you get a date on when your road's going to hit a list of when it could potentially get done? I can personally tell you, myself, Michael Voles, everybody up here, Quentin that's on, Mayor Cedar, we're talking about a very comprehensive plan on how we fill a 20-year need without a budget. What roads in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years get redone, what the maintenance program for that looks like over the next 20 years, and how that's going to continue to evolve and get financed over the next 20, 30, 40 years. Yes, very serious conversations are taking place for that question. So once we have that, we can get a better idea of where your road, my road, Mr. Gottler's road might fall. You know, it's just not an easy problem to solve.
I realize that, but if you're looking to get the best bang for your buck, we're never going to get put on the list.
I think best bang for the buck is not the best approach when we're looking at a comprehensive problem
apparently
like we have
that's
today.
what you have been doing.
Well, I'm new to this,
No,
and I can tell you I look at things a lot differently. I hope I can impact positively.
Well, hopefully, our council people start pushing them, getting us some answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee.
All right, any other public comment or questions?
I'll bring this up. Tom Marino, 1918 Hugo. Taking my dog for a walk. I go down Clinton, east of Kearney. You had contractors, I don't know if they're on the utility poles, some of the shorter ones, I believe. Very sloppy work. Left nuts, threaded rod, pinch plates, heavy-duty plastic ties all over people's lawns from essentially Kearney to 8th. What I'm thinking is people are going to start mowing their lawns in the spring and shooting nuts and bolts across the street. And
Was that Detroit Edison?
AT&T.
AT&T?
Clinton, Kearney, you said, area?
it's, yeah, it's on Clinton. It's the north side of the street where the sidewalk is.
Right.
So just a heads up, they don't, I don't know if there's anything you can do about bringing those guys back and cleaning up.
I think we can make a call to them.
Yeah, I know just the guy.
He knows just the guy.
I think it'd be, yeah, you see the plastic ties all over the place.
Yep.
That's all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? All right, we'll go to number 11, since we had so much fun with that one. Mayor, Council, anything? I just want to make sure everybody understands today's President's Day. We are honoring all presidents, not just Washington and Lincoln. We decided to honors all presidents on President's Day.
We have nothing else on the agenda. Make motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.